Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review. I'm Asbed Bedrossian, and I'm here with Hovik Manucharyan. We are recording this show on February 12, 2023, which is also day 63 of the Artsakh Blockade. We're covering that in our frequent flash updates with Gevis Gajian. Check them out in our podcast feed as well as our YouTube channel. Here are the major topics we'll touch on today. The earthquake in Turkey and Syria. We'll discuss this major humanitarian disaster and Armenia's involvement in it. Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov made some candid remarks on Russian TV on February 2nd regarding the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. We'll discuss what lens this puts on the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict and the evolving, not to say manipulated, public's view of Russia and Iran. Finally, who can keep up with all the political resignations, appointments, and other political shuffles in Yerevan, and what do they mean? We'll talk a little bit about that. To talk about these issues, we have with us Benyamin Poghosyan, who is the chairman of the Yerevan-based think tank, Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies. Hello and welcome, Benyamin. Great to have you on board today.
Hi, Benjamin.
Hi, Asbed. Hi, Hovik. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Okay, our first topic is obviously the major news in the region, and that's the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, which happened on Monday. It was a magnitude 7.8 earthquake that hit the Marash region of Turkey. This is towards the northeast of historic Armenian Gilgit. The quake also shot straight down to Syria, where it was felt as a 7.5 in the regions of Idlib and Aleppo, and was also felt very powerfully all the way down in Beirut, Lebanon. The deaths now exceed 29,000. Over 6,000 buildings are estimated to have collapsed, and the Western sanctions in Syria were a major obstacle to sending immediate aid to help those in need in that country. On Thursday, the U.S. signed off on a special blanket clearance for all earthquake-related humanitarian aid to Syria for the next 180 days. Turkish early response was slow, although international response was swift, and now a reported over 160,000 rescue workers were in all the affected regions of Turkey, helping the hundreds of thousands of people in need. Armenia has also dispatched rescuers to both Syria and Turkey. The 27-member team in Turkey is working in the Adıyaman region, and I read some news yesterday that said that the team had pulled out a little girl from under the rubble, so I was very happy about that. The 29-member team from Armenia in Syria is in the Aleppo region, and there have been many Armenian deaths reported over there. And Armenia has also sent over 30 tons of food supplies to Syria. Okay, so as far as the news goes, the political news, some in Armenia have criticized Armenia's efforts. Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Hagop Arshagyan, hit back at them for this. You can read the links in our show notes. Hovik, can you explain the arguments back and forth?
Well, first of all, this is a huge humanitarian tragedy. And of course, any suffering of people is regrettable. But in huge humanitarian cases, countries quickly leverage the events for political gain. I think that the argument from the liberal institutionalism perspective is that, we all have to help each other. Isn't it nice that we're helping each other? I think it sounds great on paper and it sounds great as a propaganda item. But in reality, that help, that Armenia can provide is much different than the help that the United States can provide. So while the amount of aid that Armenia is able to, and human resources that Armenia can provide to this is minuscule, the political repercussions are major, and it's not always good for Armenia. So we're looking at it from a humanitarian perspective. Yes, we had some aid sent, we had some people on the ground, but Turkey quickly turns it around and uses it for political purposes. For instance, the Turkish state-run news agency showed Armenian trucks driving past Igdir with the genocide denial monument in the background. I believe it's like 4 or 5 swords stuck in the air. Turkish President Erdogan didn't miss this opportunity to praise relations with Azerbaijan and said that Turkey was there at Azerbaijan's side during the 44-day war, even at this time. So when Armenian officials make this decision to send aid and sound so empathic from a political perspective, unfortunately, if this is being used for political reasons, just like every humanitarian crisis, think about what was happening during the COVID and the vaccine, masks. Everyone was distributing masks and they're claiming political points for it. What does Armenia have to gain? I don't see anything Armenia could gain from this. I think what Armenia should have provided, maybe even like a reserved like note of condolence, maybe some aid. But in this case, I don't see the benefit of actual people on the ground. And in fact, those people on the ground are being used against us, unfortunately.
Yeah.
How are they being used against us? Because it'll be like a one-line mention in an Erdogan speech somewhere. It'll be maybe Toivo Klar. I think he just tweeted about this. Oh, so nice to see Armenians, and it'll be used to further. So that propaganda will be used against Armenians internally, maybe to further the normalization agenda, which is against Armenia's interests. Now, meanwhile, on a moral level, you're seeing Turks use this against us in terms of the Igdir incident. You're seeing Erdogan gloating over their participation in the 44-day war. At least, at the minimum, if there was goodwill, if this was a issue of, okay, well, this is a humanitarian tragedy, why not let's open the Berzor corridor, at least during this process? I mean, there's a humanitarian catastrophe right there. Erdogan, after the 44-day war, his wife is on the record saying that Azerbaijan should use the Armenian POWs for negotiation and getting more, and those POWs are still in Baku. Nothing is being mentioned about those POWs. As a sign of goodwill, why wouldn't Turkey maybe even, I don't know if Turkey can twist Aliyev's arms. I suspect it can, but at least it could say something about, well, it's time to bring the POWs back, even if nothing happened. I don't see anything that Armenia could do here to make political points. And on the moral ground, sure, you can earn some fake points with Toivo Klar. We have so many fake points with them. Like, we had like 5,000 people just die 2 years ago, and the EU doesn't care. So I don't know what good that would do.
Yeah, on a practical basis, I've actually also read other analysts and politicians. The last one I think I read was from Hovik Manucharyan, saying basically condolences would have been enough because the Armenian 30 people will not make that much of a difference over the 160,000 people. Benjamin, what are your thoughts about this? But I also have a political question. How do you think this affects the math for the elections in May for Erdogan?
Okay, first of all, regarding the elections, this is definitely an emergency for Erdogan because before earthquake, even most of the opposition forces thought that most probably Erdogan would win in the presidential elections, and the main struggle it was perceived should be in the parliamentary election. Like even some figures in opposition were telling that okay, Erdogan could win the presidency, but let's at least deprive AKP from the majority in parliament. Now the situation may be changed because we see some growing anger in Turkish society, especially both to the quality of construction works, because many buildings which were destroyed, they were built after 2002 during AKP rule, and many people are asking questions about standards, norms, rules of construction, and etc. Also, there is a discussion that the response was not very swift. However, if we look at from legal point, according to Turkish constitution, the latest day of elections is June 18th. And according to the constitution and electoral code of Turkey, there's only one legal possibility to postpone elections for 1 year, and this is war. Like actual military activities only allow Turkish government to postpone elections more than June 18, 2023. Now there are some discussions in Turkey that maybe government may apply to the constitutional court, telling that okay, this is also force majeure, and maybe the earthquake has even more negative implications than potential war. So theoretically, yes, maybe constitutional court can make a decision that okay, we can somehow equal earthquake with the war, and in that case, let's postpone elections for 1 year. But the problem for Erdogan is that because the geopolitics change so quickly, it will be very challenging for Erdogan or for anyone else to clearly assess that okay, if Erdogan postpones the elections for 1 year, then, for example, May 2024 will be more favorable for Erdogan than, for example, May or June 2023. So I'm not sure if Erdogan will use some legal tricks through constitutional court somehow to postpone elections for 1 year. Probably he can postpone elections until June 18, which will mean 1 month because elections were scheduled for May 14. But also because Erdogan is if I may use the word, is a real political enemy. Now he's trying to shift the blame on the construction companies, on architects, chief engineers, And we see the reports from Turkey that owners of these construction companies, several engineers or chief architects have been arrested, and there are warrants of arrest for more than 130 people. And of course, Erdogan will try to shift the blame, and also he will try to show that, okay, these construction companies has nothing to do with AKP, or it has nothing to do with inner circle of his friends or colleagues, to reject the allegations that, okay, because of some corrupted connections, these people were able to construct without keeping the construction norms and rules. But in any case, definitely this is a significant blow for Erdogan, and it will put additional pressure on Erdogan because, again, on February 5, many or most of internal and external analysts, experts, and pundits, the assessment was that most probably Erdogan will win on May 14th. Now, no one is sure that Erdogan will win. No one is sure if elections will take place on May 14th. Elections will take place on June 18, or maybe through some legal tricks, elections will take place even in spring or early summer of 2024. So, from domestic political implications, this is a significant complications for Erdogan. Of course, again, Erdogan is a quite experienced political actor and a real political enemy. So I don't exclude that somehow he could use this shifting blame on the others and seek a victory either on May 14, or maybe just postponing elections for another month, somewhere in mid-June. But let's see. But again, of course, Erdogan will be much happier, pure from political side. I'm not speaking about human being side or humanitarian side to see this terrible earthquake, more than 30,000 citizens died, and huge devastations. If you take all this into account from pure political or domestic political point of view, definitely this is a significant or unpredictable challenge for President Erdogan. But again, also, I am not in a position to argue that this earthquake will finish with President Erdogan.
Benjamin, does this event change the balance of interdependency between Russia and Turkey?
Okay, one implication is the fact that plans to establish this Gulf hub, which were very actively discussed in Turkey initially, a meeting was scheduled in mid-February, the initial meeting to establish this Gulf hub. And the Gulf hub is a joint idea between Russia and Turkey, which theoretically will allow Russia to sell the Russian gas via Turkey to the European consumers. So this initial meeting was postponed, and according to the Russian sources or Gazprom sources, they don't know when the project will become reality. Because just a week ago, there was a perception that, okay, first meeting will take place in mid-February 2023, and most probably Gas Hub will be operational somewhere in May-June 2023. And now no one knows when this gas hub will be operational. Yes, Gazprom leadership tells that in any case the gas hub will be operational, but nobody knows when. Which means that somehow this also puts some hold on Russia-Turkey cooperation, at least on energy, which itself means that potentially, at least for some months, the Russian dependence on Turkey may be a little bit decreased because of the hold in the plans to establish this gas hub in Turkey.
Okay.
So from this point of view, probably we may say that the balance of power between these frenemies of Russia and Turkey has been tilted a little bit toward Russia as a result of this earthquake.
Okay, let's talk about the ongoing Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict a little bit. First, on February 2, and we missed a week last week, so we're covering news from 14 days, I guess. On February 2, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov gave an interview to the Russian TV 24. He discussed issues ranging from the Russia-West conflict, the war in Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, as well as the ongoing conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Glaringly, Lavrov stated that since the government of Armenia has decided to formalize a peace treaty based on the 1991 Alma-Ata principles, then the Armenia-Azerbaijan border would run essentially along the border of the two former Soviet republics. He said that left Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh inside Azerbaijan, and he also asserted that in 2020, Armenia lost 7 regions back to Azerbaijan, which it had occupied for 30 years. It used the term occupy, which was the first. The argument about Alma-Ata is not new, but this more forceful language about Armenia being an occupier is really interesting. Some, even in the opposition, argue that Russia is crossing red lines in its relationship with Armenia. Would you agree with that, Benjamin? And what are the repercussions of this perspective by Russia on the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict itself?
Okay, first of all, regarding Armenia's position about the Karabakh, I believe not only Russia, but anybody outside Armenia, I mean states or external actors involved in South Caucasus geopolitics, or in any role involved in Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict settlement process, both before and after the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war. So all external actors have a clear understanding that yes, the government of the Republic of Armenia has agreed that Nagorno-Karabakh should be part of Azerbaijan, and the key task for at least Republic of Armenia is to do everything to secure the rights of Armenians living in Nagorno-Karabakh as a part of Azerbaijan. So in this case, it's not only the Lavrov's perception, and it's not only the first time when representatives of the international community telling that, okay, guys, as far as we understand Republic of Armenia position, Republic of Armenia agrees that Karabakh is Azerbaijan, and Republic of Armenian government even does not demand some special status for Nagorno-Karabakh, or at least this special status is not a red line for the Republic of Armenian government. The red line for the Republic of Armenian government is the rights of Armenians who will continue or should continue to live in Nagorno-Karabakh under Azerbaijani jurisdiction. So if there will be some possibility, theoretical possibility, to secure the rights of Armenians living under Azerbaijani jurisdiction without any status, I mean even without autonomy, then Armenian government will be happy to pursue this path. But if there will be clear understanding that only some special status, some autonomy will secure the rights of Armenians who will live under Azerbaijani jurisdictions, then at that time, yes, Armenian government will demand some autonomy. So,
Benjamin, you have in the past said that if the Armenia does not sign any exceptions, or if there's a treaty signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan with Artsakh being left in Azerbaijan, or essentially the status of Artsakh not being underscored by Armenia, then this will be very bad for Armenia. Do you believe that any Armenians would agree to be citizens of Azerbaijan, stay there, and enjoy some guarantees or whatever sort of guarantees that can be provided? We're talking about this as if it's a realistic scenario, whereas some Armenians would claim that this is a farce. As soon as that happens, then our entire Artsakh will be depopulated. Can you clarify that a little bit?
As far as I understand, if not entire Artsakh, but absolute majority of Armenians who living now in Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, they clearly reject any notion of being under Azerbaijani jurisdiction, and they don't understand how they can live under Azerbaijani jurisdiction. And frankly speaking, it's very clear, because due to this 30 years of anti-Armenian hatred and propaganda in Azerbaijan, and at the end of the day, we saw the Azerbaijani attitude towards Armenian civilians in April 2016 four-day war, and also in 2020 war. So definitely absolute majority, or let's put this way, any Armenian who will have even a 1% possibility to live in Nagorno-Karabakh, if there will be clear choice, okay, you have no other choice, you should become an Azerbaijani citizen. I believe every Armenian who have even a 1% possibility not to become Azerbaijani citizen, even by living in Nagorno-Karabakh, definitely they will live. Of course, this process may take place within 24 hours, or this process may take place within several months, or even several years. But obviously, this will result in effect that either we will have zero Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, or maybe very few Armenians who simply has no means, I mean financial or any resources to live. And at the end of the day, this few hundred or maybe few thousand Armenians, at the end of the day, Azerbaijan even may not kill them and use them for propaganda reasons, showing to the international community that look, I was always telling that I'm a tolerant society, and here, I don't know, some 1,000 or 1,300 Armenians continue to live in Nagorno-Karabakh with Azerbaijani passports, and they are not being killed and they are not being raped.
Yeah.
But even if this will happen and some few thousand Armenians will live in Nagorno-Karabakh, even they will not be killed, because Azerbaijan would like to show to the international community that he is a really so-called, in quotes, democratic country or tolerant country. At the end of the day, it will finish with Artsakh, at least in the form as Artsakh was existent for last several thousand years. So in this case, I believe that no one should have, at least anyone who has basic understanding of Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, at least the red line is this. If there is no international military presence in Nagorno-Karabakh, which will prevent Azerbaijani state institutions entering our the territories with Armenian population. And currently we speak, unfortunately, only about 3,000 square kilometer of territories, which Azerbaijan was not able to occupy during the 2020 war. So if there is no international military presence in these territories, again, which will prevent the penetration of Azerbaijani state institutions. By state institutions, I mean police, I mean courts, I mean, I don't know, tax revenue services or whatever services. Definitely, very soon, we will have either zero Armenians or very few Armenians, which again will mean that there will be no Artsakh, at least in the sense or in the understanding which was there for several thousand years.
Yeah, I think that's important to highlight, and thank you for that clarification. Now, going back to the Lavrov statement, obviously this means that in order for the struggle for Artsakh to continue, an international military presence in Artsakh must be guaranteed. And so, I want to have your thoughts on that, on how that could happen with the current situation, because if Armenia and Azerbaijan say, everything is fine and dandy with us, then why do we need peacekeepers in Artsakh? What do you think about what would happen there? And I think we have to view that separately from any international observers or peacekeepers in Armenia itself, right?
Yes, of course. We should not mix two things. Any observer mission in Armenia, we all know that EU made the decision to deploy 2-year-long small observer mission in Armenia. It will be 100 people, but also let's clarify that only 60 or 65 from these 100 will be actual observers. Other 35, 40 people will be technical staff, drivers, and others. And they are authorized to monitor the entire Armenia-Azerbaijan border, which is more than 1,000 kilometers long. So we can understand what does it mean if 60 or 65 observers are monitoring the border of more than 1,000 kilometers. Definitely, we cannot say that this is a very strong observer mission, but again, this mission has nothing to do with Nagorno-Karabakh.
And Benjamin, I think that includes Nakhichevan's borders.
Yes. This 1,000 or even 1,100 kilometer includes Armenia-Azerbaijan border and Armenia's border with Azerbaijan proper and Armenia's border with Nakhichevan Autonomous Republic. But again, this mission has nothing to do with Nagorno-Karabakh. Absolutely.
And so
nothing.
for perspective, that's one person, one human being for about every 15, 20 kilometers.
Yes, actually, yes, of course. As far as I know, they will be headquartered in Yerevan, which is the capital of Vyodor region, and probably the 60 or 65 observers will be concentrated maybe in Vyodor and Shunik regions. But again, they are authorized to monitor entire Armenia-Azerbaijan border, so they can go up to north to Gelarkunik, to Tavosh. They also can be in Ararat region. I mean, for example, Yerevan, Barusevak, and other villages of Ararat region bordering Nakhichevan Autonomous Republic. So yes, in any case, even this is a quite small mission. Yes, it's a relatively long-term mission because initial mission was 2 months. This is a 2-year mission. But again, this is quite small mission, and also just for finishing with this mission, no one in Armenia should make a mistake that this is 100% deterrence against Azerbaijani military attack.
Yeah. Benjamin, I have more questions about the mission itself, but I have one more question about the Lavrov topic, and then we can focus on the mission again. Can we address the question of the peacekeepers in Artsakh? What would keep them in Artsakh if Armenia and Azerbaijan, as a result of the November 9th statement, basically they signed a peace deal? And in any way, there's a 5-year limit after which Azerbaijan could say that, I no longer want the peacekeepers here and you can leave. Do you see any scenario where Russian peacekeepers could stay in Artsakh? And if not, then who will stay there?
Regarding the future of Russian peacekeepers or any peacekeeper operation in Nagorno-Karabakh, first of all, yes, according to the November 10, 2020 statement, both Armenia and Azerbaijan, 6 months before the end of this initial term, which means in May 2025, Armenia and Azerbaijan can object to the automatic extension of this deployment for another 5-year term. And both Azerbaijani experts and also Azerbaijani political leadership, including President Aliyev, reiterated many times that Azerbaijan will object the extension of this deployment of Russian peacekeepers, and Azerbaijan will demand the withdrawal of Russian peacekeepers, even if there is no peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Also, we should clarify that even if there is no peace agreement, Like if Armenia rejects to
Right.
sign peace agreement, telling that, okay, first of all, what Azerbaijan offers cannot be called peace agreement, because if there is a conflict and there is a peace agreement, it means that this agreement should, if not satisfy equally both sides, at least it should satisfy or meet minimum at least 10% of interest of one side and 90% interest of other side. To be called peace agreement, I mean at least basic, some few, but at least some interest of one side of conflict should be met. The problem is that what Azerbaijan demands and what they call peace agreement, this document or the ideas, if signed or accepted, it will satisfy all Azerbaijani demands, all 100%, and will violate all interests of Armenian Nagorno-Karabakh. And I said it very publicly and also in the different trainings or conferences or meetings with Europeans and with Azerbaijanis that, okay, what Azerbaijan wants, this document cannot be called peace agreement, because what Azerbaijan wants, the document or the piece of paper, it satisfies only Azerbaijani demands, or it meets only Azerbaijani interests and violates all interests of Republic of Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh Republic. So please don't call it peace agreement. I call it capitulation. Maybe some other experts can use other terms. But again, this document cannot be called peace agreement. So this is also very important, because many people and Azerbaijan also try to accuse Armenia also in Europe and even in Russia that, okay, Armenia does not want to sign peace agreement. What I'm telling that, okay, of course, I'm not in a position to speak on behalf of Armenian government, but if our Armenian government does not want to sign the piece of paper which Azerbaijan presented, to be clearly and to use precise terms, we should say that Armenian government does not want to sign capitulation. And no one can accuse Armenian government that you don't want to sign peace agreement, because what Azerbaijan wants and offers has nothing to do with peace agreement.
And under those conditions, Benyamin, the Armenian government would definitely want to extend the Russian presence, correct? Or logically, they should want to extend.
Officially, yes, and we see that even Prime Minister reiterated many times that we believe that the Russian peacekeepers should continue their deployment for additional 10, 15, or 20 years. But the problem is that even if there is a no peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, this does not prevent Azerbaijan from demanding the withdrawal of Russian peacekeepers in May 2025, 6 months before the end of initial term of Russian peacekeepers. Let's then understand, okay, what may happen if in May 2025 Azerbaijan demands the withdrawal of Russian peacekeepers. Of course, much depends on the course of Russia-Ukraine war. If war ends by May 2025, and if war ends in relatively favorable terms of Russia, and I'm not going to speculate what does it mean, because if you ask 100 experts what does it mean favorable terms for Russia, you will receive 100 different answers. So I'm using if the war ends by May 2025, I mean war in Ukraine, and if war ends by favorable terms for Russia in a sense how as Russian leadership understands this. So in Russian leadership will say, okay, war ends in favorable terms for us, then most probably Russia will be in much stronger position to keep Russian peacekeepers in Nagorno-Karabakh, even if Azerbaijan demands the withdrawal. And frankly speaking, if war ends with relatively favorable terms for Russia, I don't believe that Azerbaijan will demand the withdrawal of Russian peacekeepers. But the problem for this logic is that no one knows first when the war in Ukraine ends, and second, how the war in Ukraine will end. No one can guarantee that the war may end not in a favorable conditions for Russia. And in this case, it will embolden Azerbaijan even more. Because for my understanding, it was not considered that, for example, Azerbaijan launched its large-scale aggression against Armenia on September 13, 14, only a week after a Russian disaster in Kharkiv region, when Ukraine made successful counter-attack around Kharkov and kick out Russians from several thousand square kilometers. It was from September 6 to September 11, and then on September 13, Azerbaijan launched its large-scale aggression against Armenia, which means that Russian failures in Ukraine emboldens Azerbaijan more and makes Azerbaijan behavior more uglier toward both Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh and Russia. But again, no one sitting in Armenia can guarantee that first, war will end by May 2025, and second, that war will end by favorable terms for Russia. Then question may rise, okay, what Armenia can do? Okay, option number one, We simply wait and see, and every day go to the church and pray that war ends with relatively favorable terms for Russia. And if this not happen, we will say, okay, in that case, nothing can be done. Most probably Azerbaijan will demand the withdrawal of Russian peacekeepers. Most probably Russia will not be in a position to resist. Russian peacekeepers will leave. And then if not entire population of Artsakh, but at least minimum 90-95% of population of Artsakh will live with Russians, and we will lose Artsakh, but okay, what we can do? At the end of the day, some may argue, or the Armenian government may argue, but Armenian government has zero possibility to influence end of Ukraine war. Okay, this is one option. Simply wait and see and hope, or go to the church and pray. The second option is to try to somehow separate the presence of peacekeeping operation in Nagorno-Karabakh from the outcome of Ukraine war. Of course, this is a very tricky and complicated path, and even is not very clear how you can separate this. One option is internationally mandated peacekeeping operation, but this is a non-starter because A, under the current confrontation between Russia and the West, never Western countries in UN Security Council nor in OSCE will vote to provide peacekeeping mandate for any Russian troops. This is simply excluded by 100%. Second, I don't believe that the Western countries will agree to have some joint peacekeeping operations with Russia. Let's say, okay, let's keep Russians there and send some other troops and give these joint troops the international mandate. Because again, it will mean that the United States, United Kingdom, France agree that Russian troops can be peacekeepers at any part in the globe. Given the current confrontation between Russia and the West and current rhetoric of the West, which telling that, okay, Russia is almost equal to the Nazi Germany in 1941, this also excluded. Of course, the West will be happy to replace Russian peacekeepers with any other peacekeepers because it will be in line with West interests to decrease Russian influence in South Caucasus. But from this point of view, Russia will never agree to replace its peacekeepers with any other peacekeepers, which means that in this case, Russia will veto any resolution in UN Security Council or in OSCE, because Russia has veto power in OSCE and in UN Security Council. So any option for international mandate for peacekeepers, which will allow to separate the presence of peacekeepers from the outcome of Russia-Ukraine war, they are doomed.
What is option 3?
Option 3, Armenia can start negotiations, not go to the OSCE, not go to the UN Security Council, but start separate negotiations with Russia, EU, United States, probably with Iran, trying in these separate negotiations to understand, are there any possibility for some sort of written or oral agreement, but not a UN Security Council resolution or OSCE resolution, but some sort of agreement which will allow to either keep Russians there or somehow to change a little bit the format, but without giving international mandate. Of course, what I'm telling is very vague. It's very complicated, and maybe it's also out of reality. And at the end of the day, this negotiation may bring nothing. And at the end of the day,
it all depends on Azerbaijan too. Like, whether Azerbaijan.
Yes, and let's not forget that Azerbaijan, in any case, may reject any results of this potential negotiation. But at least, I believe, if you have two options in general, like wait and see, or to do something, then better to do something, even you have very little chances to succeed. Otherwise, again, another option is every day go to church and say, okay, let's hope that the war in Ukraine will not end with catastrophic implications for Russia, which will allow Russia to keep its peacekeepers in Nagorno-Karabakh. Or because war will end with relatively favorable conditions for Russia, Azerbaijan will not dare to demand the withdrawal of Russian peacekeepers.
Okay. So now going back to the EU monitors, they're here. A lot of questions still, though, for me at least, remain about their mission, given that for 2 months in the end of 2022, they filed no public reports. It is said that they filed the reports internally and reported to their management chain, but I fail to see how that helps Armenia so far. So during this time, Armenia basically, it seems, had a choice to either bring in CSTO monitors, the same capacity, like, people with binoculars, essentially. CSTO monitors versus EU monitors. And Armenia chose the EU monitors. And in rejecting the CSTO mission, Armenia said that the CSTO collectively had not made any political statement about Azerbaijan's incursion into Armenian territory, whereas Pashinyan made some reference saying that, you know what, the EU has very carefully delineated what they think Armenia's borders are, and we're thankful to that. The CSTO couldn't say where Armenia's borders are, some reasoning like that. What do you think about that statement? Has the EU really acknowledged Armenia's borders on these 29,800 square kilometers that Pashinyan wants? And who is the EU? Isn't the border between two countries recognized and delimited between the two neighbors and not like some external entity like the EU?
Okay, first of all, as far as I understand, if we speak about Armenian international borders, we may assume that every country who was a UN member and recognized Armenia probably recognized Armenia within some border. So to say that, okay, EU member states recognize Armenia's territorial integrity while CSTO member states does not recognize Armenia's territorial integrity, for me, it's, at least from legal point of view, I'm not an expert legal or expert on international law, but it sounds for me strange. Regarding the dismissal of CSTO mission, and as far as I know, and as far as I remember, Lavrov said that it will be military mission, not even civilian. So probably these CSTO observers, they will be even have some light arms, at least. So why Armenia rejected the deployment of CSTO mission? There are several options. Maybe because, of course, first of all, we don't know. It would be CSTO mission, which means that the monitors from all 5 members of CSTO, or it will simply be 100% pure Russian mission under the CSTO umbrella. If there will be also the monitors from other CSTO countries like Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, or Belarus, who has a very clear, strong relationship or partnership with Azerbaijan. Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan are member of Organization of Turkic States, and we all know the partnership between Belarus and Azerbaijan. Probably Armenian government did not want even to see the representative of these countries along Armenia-Azerbaijan border. But again, we don't know. CSTO mission, it would mean a representatives of all 5 CSTO member states except Armenia, or it would mean only Russians, which will simply use the CSTO as an umbrella. Also, I believe there was a concern in Armenia that if we will agree on CSTO observer mission, then EU will not agree to send observer mission because probably there will be some EU member countries who will see the simultaneous deployment of EU and CSTO observer missions along Armenia-Azerbaijan border in Armenia as a sign of even indirect cooperation between EU and CSTO, between EU and Russia.
But aren't there Russian troops already along the Armenian and Azerbaijani border? For instance, in Nerkinhand and other areas.
Okay, Russian troops, of course, are deployed in Syunik, and also I believe in Ararat region. There is a small Russian outpost in Parusevac, which is in Ararat region, and definitely there are some Russian outposts in Syunik region which have been deployed after November 2020 war and which have been deployed by Armenian government request. But at least as far as I understand, the Russian troops and CSTO observer mission, they were perceived differently from EU side. And again, there was some concerns in EU that 2 observer missions deployed almost simultaneously along Armenia-Azerbaijan border in Armenia with almost identical tasks. This could be interpreted as some sort of EU-Russia or EU-CSTO cooperation, and probably some EU member countries were not ready for this. So maybe Armenian government had an understanding that, okay, if we agree on CSTO mission, then most probably EU mission will not arrive. Again, could be one of explanations. Second explanation that maybe Armenian government was not happy to see Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz, or Belarus observers along Armenia-Azerbaijan border, given this country's close and strategic partnership with Azerbaijan. But here, regarding the EU mission, I believe what is important to understand that first of all, European Union did not send this mission to Armenia to freeze the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. This is very important to understand because there are some in Armenia who believe that the primary leverage of Azerbaijan to force Armenia to sign something was threat of use of force or actual use of force. So EU sent monitors not to allow Azerbaijan to use the force, which means that EU deprived Azerbaijan from this primary leverage, and which means that now nothing can happen, I mean, okay, we can continue negotiations for years without any agreement, or even we can simply say that we are not going to negotiate, and Azerbaijan will not escalate because EU observer mission is here not to allow Azerbaijan to escalate. And according to this logic, EU sent observer mission to freeze the conflict, like to say Azerbaijan never dare to escalate against Armenia, and this will give Armenia, okay, it's wonderful, at least 2 years we can do nothing and live happily because EU observers are here. No, this is not the fact. This is absolutely not the fact. European Union did not send the mission to freeze the conflict. European Union sends the mission to facilitate the peace process and to facilitate the signature of peace agreement. Because from the European perspective, if there is escalation on the border, incursion, etc., this harms peace process. So yes,
Yeah.
they send observer mission somehow to prevent escalations, but not simply to prevent the escalation and freeze the conflict, but to prevent escalation, to create more conducive environment for the resumption of negotiations and signature of peace agreement. So we should understand it very clear.
Is that really the motivation for the EU? Because if we are to believe Nikol Pashinyan, he made some startling comments in the parliament last Wednesday where he said basically that EU officials are looking to Armenia with suspicion because Azerbaijan is spreading propaganda that Russia and Armenia are planning to attack it. And Pashinyan claimed that this is one of the chief reasons that the EU agreed to send monitors, which is to verify and ensure that Russia is not planning to attack Azerbaijan. I mean, this is the bombshell announcement to me.
But let me add to that, Hovik, that Russia completely denied that, saying that they've never heard anything like this from Azerbaijan, any concerns that Russia is plotting against them.
Yeah.
No, frankly speaking, I don't believe that any country or anyone who has basic understanding about South Caucasus, about military balance between Armenia and Azerbaijan and geopolitical developments for at least last 2.5 years during and after the 2020 war, I don't believe that anyone seriously could think that Armenia and Russia together could attack Azerbaijan from Armenian territory. No, this is for me, it's too much for frankly speaking.
And I agree with you. I think that most people advising Pashinyan would also agree with us. But in that case, words have, meaning, and there is a reason why they were uttered. So why did Pashinyan make those statements? And Russia for many months has been now voicing concern about the EU monitors interfering with Russia's activities, possibly being there to spy on Russia. Iran has had similar concerns. So why does Pashinyan pour gasoline on this flame?
Okay, frankly speaking, I'm absolutely not in a position to give explanation or comment on Prime Minister words. But again, I'm telling that I will be surprised if anyone, like I don't know, like EU or people sitting in Brussels, or I don't know, the French government, Italy government, Germany government, really were thinking that Armenia and Russia are planning attacking Azerbaijan from Armenian territory, and that is why they need monitors to prevent joint Armenian-Russian attack against Azerbaijan. Okay, in politics or in life, we have, they say never. But again, I will be significantly surprised if anyone outside Armenia will have real concerns that again, Armenia and Russia jointly planning or are going to attack Azerbaijan from Armenian territory. For me, this is like say
absurd.
It will be quite strange, put it mildly.
Yeah. Hovik, I think there were also articles that said that Armenia thinks that Iran has no objections to these EU mission people, while Iran itself was actually saying something else.
Iran rejected that statement, and those were actually printed in Nikol Pashinyan's newspaper, the Haygakan Zhamanak or Armenian Times, saying essentially that Iran quoting or interpreting Iran as if they have no objections, and then after that the Iranian, I believe, ambassador or someone in the foreign ministry rejected that statement.
Okay, regarding the Iran, there was a conference on Armenian-Iran relations on February 9, organized by the Institute of Oriental Studies of the National Academy of Sciences, and the Iranian ambassador took part in that conference. Yes, I believe it was on February 9 in Yerevan. And after conference, Iranian ambassador to Armenia answered to some questions of journalists, and he simply reiterated when he was asked what's Iran's position about the deployment of EU mission in Armenia. he said that Iran believes that regional powers should deal with region's issues, and usually the involvement of non-regional actors or non-regional powers did not contribute to the stability, but opposite create more complications. So it was some like the diplomatic way of telling that Iran is not happy. At least Iran is not happy with the deployment of EU mission.
So these so-called strange statements by Pashinyan, not to say essentially lies because everybody else is denying them. Let me put it in context of a poll that we saw late in January, Benjamin. The MPG organization polled over 1,100 residents of Armenia in January of 2023 for their views on the ongoing conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And it seemed to, we're not going to go through it slide by slide. We don't have enough time. But the poll indicated an evolving view of Russia among the public in Armenia. Do you think that these statements come in context of that evolution, that massaging of Armenian public view for Russia and Iran?
Definitely, the anti-Russian sentiments are growing in Armenia. And there were a significant hike immediately after 2020 war. And of course, we can discuss this was objective or subjective, but there was another significant hike of anti-Russian sentiment after May and November 2021 Azerbaijani aggressions directly against Armenia and Azerbaijani occupation of some territories in Armenia. And of course, there was also the huge increase of anti-Russian sentiments of during and after September 2022. Azerbaijani attacks against Armenia, and at the end of the day, now even I believe Armenian government agrees that minimum 150 square kilometer or up to 200 square kilometer of Armenian sovereign territory are occupied by Azerbaijan. And of course, many Armenians are asking that, okay, we somehow understand why Russia didn't militarily intervene in 2020 war, because Nagorno-Karabakh was not part of Armenia legally, and Russian security guarantees did not cover Armenia. But now we have a situation when almost 2 years, in May 2023, we will fix the second anniversary of first Azerbaijani aggression against Republic of Armenia, direct aggression, and first 2-year anniversary of first several square kilometer territory occupied by Azerbaijan and occupied the Armenian territory.
You mean May 2021?
Yes, May 2021. I mean,
yeah.
In 3 months, it will be second anniversary. So a lot of people now are asking that, okay, September 2022, there were some explanations that in September 2022, there was a war in Ukraine. Russia was fighting against 54 countries, collective West, led by United States, plus Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, etc. And so Russia simply has no time or resources to care about Armenia. But frankly speaking, we didn't see a strong reaction by Russia also in May 2021 and November 2021 when there was no war in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So all this significantly contributed to the significant increase of anti-Russian sentiment in Armenia or disappointment. Okay, we can use more diplomatic term of disappointment, and we can use term much closer to the reality, anti-Russian sentiments. Of course, it's very difficult to say now 30% of Armenians hate Russia or 20% don't trust Russia or 50% believes that Russia is not Armenia's friend. I'm not going to speculate regarding the numbers, but definitely starting from 2020 war, there is a strong tendency of growing anti-Russian sentiments in Armenia. And these 3 aggressions of Azerbaijan against Armenia, May 2021, November 2021, and September 2022, and the lack of actions or absence of any actions by Russia definitely contributed to the growing anti-Russian sentiments.
Yeah, and the poll results are a lot more nuanced. They don't necessarily just say that there's anti-Russian sentiment or anything like that. It's just basically that they indicate who seems to be doing more for the Artsakh issue. And they think, for example, France is doing a lot. And when they ask who bears more responsibility, the top responsibility, of course, is Azerbaijan and then Russians and things like that. So the negative sentiments are a little more stacked against those countries. The positive is more towards the West. And that's how it breaks out.
Frankly speaking, one thing which is very strange for me is that people believe that Russia somehow supported or even organized or co-organized, for example, the Lachin blockade. Because for me, this is completely out of any logic.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Lachin blockade, first of all, directed against Russia. Because first, the ongoing Lachin blockade contributes to more anti-Russian sentiment in Armenia. because now a lot of Armenians are asking why on earth the Russian peacekeepers cannot disperse the 700 so-called eco-activists. No one is demanding to shoot or kill them, but at least to disperse them. So every day of blockade of Lachin corridor contributes to more anti-Russian sentiment in Armenia.
It has definitely made them look more ineffective, yes.
Yes. And to say that Russia is interested to have more anti-Russian sentiment in Armenia, for me, it's too much. And second, the every day of blockade of Lachin corridor discredited Russia in general, because even the Western countries are mocking Russia, telling that, okay, guys, you are telling that we are fighting in Ukraine, we're fighting collective West because we want to be an equal pole in this emerging multipolar world, equal with US, China, India. So we have huge ambitions to compete with collective West or to be equal with China, India, or whoever is going to be in this emerging or non-emerging multipolar world. But you cannot deal with tiny Azerbaijan, because frankly speaking, if you compare Azerbaijan with collective West or China or India, Azerbaijan is a tiny country. And this blockade is also humiliating for Russia, because Azerbaijan is showing to the world that even the country as Azerbaijan, which is not even the middle power, is a compact power or small power and tiny power, he can humiliate Russia for whatever reasons, because Russia is dependent on Turkey, because Russia cannot afford problems with Azerbaijan, because this will trigger Russia crisis with Turkey, and Russia cannot afford crisis with Turkey. But no one is interested in these details. Fact is fact that Azerbaijan mocks and humiliates Russia. And again, to say that first, Russia is interested to see more anti-Russian sentiments in Armenia, and second, Russia is interested to be humiliated by Azerbaijan. For me, these both arguments have zero logic, which means that any claims that Russia organized or Russia is behind the blockade of Lachin corridor, for me, does not make sense, because I don't see any logic.
And on the topic of that poll, before we go, and we'll link to some screenshots of it. The only thing that I wanted to call out is that in this poll, 97% collectively of people said that they do not agree, or they do not accept that the population of Artsakh can be a minority within Azerbaijan. That number, compared to say November 2022 and a previous poll of May 2022, is much higher. Like, as high as it is higher than before. So for instance, in November 2022, it was 89% of people were against that, and maybe the rest, like 2.4%, said, well, maybe there's a way that Armenians can live in Azerbaijan. And the same in May 2022. So the population in Armenia has once again spoken up on the record and said that they're against Artsakh being part of Azerbaijan, or Artsakhtsis being essentially a minority within Azerbaijan. But we don't have time, so I want to go to our next question very quickly. And this is, I think, more a question about the issue of institutions. There have been a number of resignations and new appointments in Yerevan and in Armenian politics in general. It is all sort of vertigo-inducing because there is so many of them. Like, for instance, Christina Grigoryan resigned from the position of HR ombudsman, not even completing 1 year in that position.
Hovik, exactly 1 year to the day.
Okay, well, so
yes, I believe
365 days.
She was appointed on January 24. Yeah, that's right.
Resigned on January 23.
So not only that, but the names that are being brought up as potential replacements, Tatevik Simonyan, I had no idea who she was, and I had to look her up. She's basically currently Deputy Minister of Labor and Social Affairs, but previously, like in the 2 years before, she was a clothing shop manager for 16 years. I'm sorry, I have to mention this. I mean, what the actual heck is going on here? Edward Aghajanyan, his nickname is DJ, resigned because he used to be a DJ before joining the government of Armenia, and is an important ally of Pashinyan, resigned from the parliament. He was the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament, and in his place they put Sarkis Khandanyan, who is essentially who made some statements against Artsakh or against Artsakh's independence. The Shirak governor's office, so Nazeli Baghdasaryan resigned from the position of governor of Shirak. That she was in her role less than a year. Same things in education ministry. Yeah, I mean, let's just go. Like in the
we'll put a listing in the show notes, Hovik.
Yeah, but in the education ministry, the minister of education and a deputy minister were sacked precisely because they could not get the desired result in the elections for the new president of Brusov State University. So I just don't know where to begin. What is your opinion, Benjamin, about all these changes going on in Armenian politics? I can't even keep up with the names. Can you?
Frankly speaking, no, I can't. And I don't want to discuss every case because we can go into some details or we can speculate because we don't know all the details, what happened and why. But in general, the problem for Armenia is that we are becoming more and more like a one-man show country because 90% of population didn't know anyone. Like people are being appointed and only on the high-level position, like deputy prime minister. And in parliamentary republic, deputy prime minister is perceived to be among top 5 or 6 leaders of the country. But the deputy prime minister is appointed, then he is dismissed, and 90% of people even don't know the name of the deputy prime minister. They don't know him. They don't know who was he, what for he was responsible, what he did, what he didn't, why he was sacked. Did he did something good? Did he did something bad? So we are becoming more and more a country when absolute majority don't know anyone. And this is dangerous because it creates a very blurred line of personal accountability and personal responsibility because anyone can be appointed to any position, he can fail, then he can be sacked or fired, but nobody knows him, nobody knows why. Almost all only knows the prime minister, and everything is like going around prime minister. You either trust him or you don't trust him, you love him or you hate him. But I don't believe that this is a good sign if we speak about institutional building, because at the end of the day, for any country to be relatively successful, or at least to overcome these huge challenges, and Armenia is really facing huge, I will say even existential challenges. In this case, we need institutions. But if everything is going around one person, this automatically means that the institution cannot be developed, which means that Armenia will be less capable of facing these challenges or dealing with challenges or tackle with challenges.
All right, so let's wrap up our topics here. I'd like to ask each of you if there's been something on your mind this past week that you would like to talk about. Benjamin, what's on your mind?
Okay, I would like to better understand the recent activities of Russians because on Wednesday we have this special representative of Russian Foreign Minister Hovik who visited Armenia. On the same day, our Minister of Foreign Affairs had a phone talk with Lavrov, and on the same day, Defense Minister Pashinyan had a phone call with Shoigu. Frankly speaking, I didn't remember this type of 24-hour Russian activities in Armenia, at least starting from end of 2024. Like Hovik was here, discussions about Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, peace treaty, Lachin corridor. The same day, phone talks between Russian and Armenian foreign ministers. Same day, phone talks between Russian and Armenian ministers of defense. It would be interesting to have a more or better understanding what's going on, why we see this type of Russian activities, and is this only connected with Russia's concerns about deployment of EU mission, or we have some underground activities?
Hovik, what's on your mind?
A lot of things, but for my rant, I would just quickly like to say that Armenian journalists have been for more than a year trying to get some confirmation from Armenia regarding, exactly how much of Armenia's territory has been occupied by Azerbaijan since 2021 or even since after 2020. And for more than a year, essentially, Armenia was refusing this. I know because I followed the work of David Galsyan, who's been on top of this. He's from Sputnik Armenia. And just recently, Armenian officials released this information, but unfortunately not because of Armenian journalistic efforts. They released this information in The Hague as a respondent to the lawsuit by Azerbaijan, which was a frivolous lawsuit, and we shouldn't go into it. But basically, it released a very nice map with color codes of when exactly which territory was captured by Azerbaijan. This was exactly the information requested by Armenian media for more than a year, and they were just rejecting it. They were giving Armenian media the runaround. But Azerbaijan, sues Armenia, and they're able to offer this information, very simply in a lawsuit.
All right, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you, Benjamin, for joining us today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Benjamin.
Thank you for having me.
That's our show this week. We hope you found it informative. Now go find us on social media and follow us. Go, go, go. We'll talk to you next week.